Hey guys, Fred Bowler here, and welcome to my channel, The Wildlife Ambassador. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the medically significant spiders of the USA. Now, of all the thousands of different types of spiders, only two are medically significant. That means that only two can potentially do you serious bodily harm from a bite. There are approximately 5 types of widow spiders in the U.S. There's many types around the world, and we're going to be talking about those and the brown recluse. There are about 13 types of brown recluse in the U.S. and many others around the world, and but only one species of recluse is potent enough to do you serious bodily harm, and that is the brown recluse, Loxoceles reclusa. There's a lot of different Loxoceles, but the most potent one in the U.S. is reclusa, the brown recluse. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the two types of medically significant spiders in the U.S., of course, are the widows and the brown recluse. The hobo spider, which is in a different family from both the recluse and the widows, used to be considered medically significant, but that was ruled out due to a lack of substantial evidence. Well, the black widow is very common in the U.S., and many people know about this spider. It's been labeled the silent killer. Silent but deadly. But, so is Fig, my dog. He can be silent but deadly also. But I digress. Widows are found throughout the U.S. And in Florida, we have two species of black widows, the brown widow and the red widow. And the red widow is only found in the Ocala National Forest and one other place south around Lake Wales, Florida. It's interesting to note that the common house spider, which is harmless, is in the same family as the black widow. And the common house spider is found in just about everybody's house in the U.S., either in closets, basement, wherever. It just lacks the potent venom and also the hourglass on the abdomen. The black widow is a very shy and secretive spider, and they usually live up in nooks and crannies in what's called their tangled web. And to get food, they'll string what's called swathing film. And it's one strand of web from floor to ceiling or wherever they're at to the floor, and they'll anchor it to the floor. And they'll have many of these. And whatever trips those, whatever comes along, whatever bug comes along, whether it be spiders, crickets, whatever, that touches that web, the spider will slide down that swathing film amazingly fast to grab and envenomate that animal. And to see them do that is amazing. I've seen them get scorpions that hit that web, and they tangle that scorpion up so quick, and they just wrap them all up, and the scorpion has no defense against the widow. They're quite capable of taking on animals much bigger than and it is a very, very strong web. Black widow web is one of the strongest webs known to man. They actually used to use them in the web in World War II in flight instruments, behind the glass of certain flight instruments. That's a kind of an interesting little fact. Black widow venom is a very powerful neurotoxin, and it's made to incapacitate animals very quickly. The bite is considered extremely dangerous, and you must get to a hospital if you are bitten. Again, I am not a physician, but the bites are serious. So if you're ever bitten by a black widow, don't wait, because the effects of the venom are serious, and they take place quite quickly, from about 5 to 7 minutes. The black widow gets its name from killing the male after breeding. But this is not always the case. It's almost a misnomer, because other spiders kill the male almost 100%. Well, some male and female spider species get along quite well, and there's not that attrition rate on males as there in as in other species. But for the most part, male spiders got it pretty rough when it comes to courtship and breeding. Now, male spiders in general much smaller than the female spider. Uh, Here's the black widow male, and he's a tiny little guy, and he doesn't bite. He's not potent like the female species, but his sole purpose is to breed. This is another black widow species male, and you'll notice that the red lines point to the bulbs on the pedipalps of the male, and those are used to store sperm. Widows may have several egg cases, and in each egg case, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of babies. But remember that the attrition rate or the survival rate of these babies is extremely low. Only a few will survive out of those hundreds and hundreds of babies. Now we're moving on to the brown widow. And the brown widow can be many different shades of brown. It can be from dark mocha brown to really light beige. And it's thought to be introduced from Africa, where it originated from, and obviously came over with furniture or plants or whatever. But an interesting note is all indications show that these spiders are not as potent as the black widow spider or the red widow of Florida. And there have been numerous bite cases reported, and I've even been asked to identify some brown widows by physicians. And they were good envenomations, but the only thing that was documented, clinically documented, from these brown widow bites have been just little blepping or blisters at the bite location and not the neurotoxic responses that you get from the black widow. And as always, consult a physician on spider bites or do your research on spider bites, as we know that people's immune systems are different and more serious reactions can occur to an individual that may be atypical of other individuals. The hourglass of a brown widow is orange. It's not blood red like if you see here with the black widow. I mean, they're jet black and it's blood red. There is no mistake. But a brown widow is orange to a deep orange, but not red. This is a juvenile brown widow. You can see the hourglass is not quite developed. It's got a few more molts or sheddings to get to maturity. So I don't know if you're noticing or not, but when these pictures are being shown of black and brown widows, they have egg cases with them. And what differences do you notice between a black widow egg case and a brown widow egg case? Yep, the brown widow egg case has these points or little spicules all over them. And the black widow egg case and the red widow egg cases are smooth. And that's important because a lot of people get confused and they told me, gosh, my house is full of, or my patio or my garage is full of black widows. And I'll ask them if they can show me a picture of the egg cases. I'll ask them, do they have egg cases? And they'll say, yeah. And so they'll send me the picture, and 9 times out of 10, they are brown widow egg cases. And that's not the big worry you have to have, especially if there's toddlers around, it being brown widows. Okay, now we're moving into the brown recluse, one of the most controversial spiders in the U.S. as far as bites are concerned, and attitude. There are many species of recluse around the world. Some recluse around the world are potentially the most deadly spider there is, such as some in the Middle East, the Cicaridae, which is the family of the recluse. But here in the United States, the actual brown recluse, Loxoceles reclusa, and there's other Loxoceles in the United States, and they're brown, from different shades of brown. Like Loxoceles apache out in Arizona is dark chocolate brown. But like I was saying, only the brown recluse is potentially medically significant. And I'll tell you why potentially. I say potentially. Now, as you Midwesterners know, brown recluse is very common throughout the Midwest and the West and even the North of the United States. They are in a whole lot of attics and cellars. I have friends in Illinois who have shown me pictures of their cellar up in the rafters, the floor joists, and there are several recluse, but they've never been bitten. We're going to talk about how you get bitten, the myths involved, and the venom of the brown recluse. Now, I also think it's important to note that the brown recluse is also not an aggressive spider that seeks us out to eat us. The bites involving brown recluse involve the spider being into clothing that are left on the floor, in closets, shoes, under covers, and that nature. And the person bitten is simply coming in contact with the spider, and then the spider obviously feels it has to get defensive or be killed. And of course, I have to say, I don't condone holding medically significant spiders because you're simply taking a chance that you're going to hurt the spider or scare the spider into a bite. And I don't know about you, but I don't have excess money to spend on a very expensive hospital bill. So I'm putting the graphic warning up again because some viewers might be uneasy with the photos that I have of the brown recluse bite and also other wounds that are attributed to brown recluse, but they're not from the brown recluse. The majority of recluse bites end up like this. Few turn into the infamous necrosis that everybody thinks about and hears about. Now, one thing with these wounds, if they do turn purple, then they're probably going to show signs of necrosis. And according to medical journals, the steroid dapsone, if given within a short time after the bite, tends to alleviate the effects of recluse bites, the venom. However, most people don't know when they're bitten. They simply notice a lesion or wound on themselves, not feeling the bite. Maybe it happened at night. The recluse is not a very painful bite. And by then it's too late, and that steroid will not work. So here is an actual recluse bite after it has become necrotic. And it depends on the individual's immune system and how their system can fight the effects of this venom. And by the way, unlike the black widow, the recluse venom is a cytotoxin, and that affects the skin cells rather than our neurosystem. So it eats, that's why it eats, and you get this necrosis on your epidermis. Now here's some interesting facts involving recluse bites. And you have to remember that if you're watching the media, they need ratings. They love to play on people's fears. That's why you hear swarms of snakes, swarms or shark-infested waters. That's where sharks live. How can they infest them? Things like that, alligator attacks. So it's important to sit back and do your study on a particular subject and research. You don't fall victim to hysteria. It's very important. And believe me, I've talked to so many people that are they totally freak themselves out thinking these spiders are ruling the world and coming to eat them and kill their families. And it's just not the case. Accidents happen, of course, and incidents happen, but it is not the human destruction by these animals. I've personally witnessed wrong diagnoses of wounds by physicians on friends of mine and acquaintances who didn't realize what they were bitten, but I knew what they were bitten by. I knew it wasn't a recluse bite. And many of these were deer fly bites or even tick bites. And then they went to the doctor because they were concerned. And in several cases, they were actually administered dapsone, which is not a good thing when you haven't been bitten by a recluse. These are a couple mosquito bites, and this is a tick bite, and often confused with the brown recluse bite. Many wounds blamed on brown recluse are simply bacteria that has gotten into the wound, and most of the time the most prevalent cause is scratching. You have so much bacteria under your nails, fingernails, or going in water that has bacteria in it, such as the flesh-eating bacteria. And matter of fact, Galveston, Texas one year had a horrible infection rate from the water of the flesh-eating bacteria. And right away they started blaming the spider, but then research showed it was flesh-eating bacteria. Bacteria can be a wicked thing. Dr. G.B. Edwards is an acquaintance of mine, and I've had occasion to discuss with him this very topic of recluse bites versus diagnoses by physicians. And he co-authored this interesting paper and put it in the Journal of Medical Entomology. And it sheds light on exactly what I've known speaking to people. And it's a pretty interesting article. And I'll put a link to it in the description of this video so you can read more about it. Now, although his research was done in Florida, where the brown recluse is not endemic to, it does not exist in great numbers. It is introduced when people, say, move from the Midwest and they have boxes from their garages or their attics or cellars, but it is extremely isolated. And if the state finds out about it, they'll fumigate whatever premises those spiders are on. But there are a few cases, but they don't naturally occur in Florida. Well, I would venture to say these misdiagnoses are probably United States wide by physicians simply because they are not, or they didn't used to be, and maybe they've gotten better at it, be familiar with envenomations both by reptiles and invertebrates, such as spiders. Now, here are a few Florida native spiders that have been falsely identified by people thinking they were brown recluse. I get a lot of calls on these three species, but the first one is actually a male southern house spider, and the female is the next picture, and they have what's called sexual dimorphism. The male looks totally different than the female. The male is 100% harmless. He does not bite. And one way you can tell, it does look like a brown recluse, but it has, the shape is completely different. It has way longer legs than a recluse. And also, if you look at those red lines, it's pointing to his pedipalps, which are much, much longer than the brown recluse. But I can more understand this one being misidentified, but the female looks nothing like a brown recluse, and they're actually very, very beneficial spiders and great roachers. The female southern house spider can live for over 8 years, while the male, when he reaches maturity, usually dies within a month or two. And the next one is the huntsman spider, a very fast wandering spider, often seen in our garages, barns, sheds, on our walls. Very fast, big spider, and a great roacher. And like I've said before, all these spiders are venomous, but just because something is venomous doesn't mean it can hurt or kill you. Bees are venomous, All spider families except for one, Uloboridae, are venomous, but can't hurt you. And when I say hurt, we mean that it can't systemically affect you in an adverse way. There may be a little sting, or sometimes there's no pain at all from spider bites. But we know that scorpions are venomous. All Florida scorpions are what we consider harmless, and that they cannot kill you generally. So there you have it, with the two medically significant spiders out of the thousands in the USA. And always remember, losing fear opens up the door to discovery. And always remember, spiders are our friends. They eat things that hurt us and our pets, like ticks, fleas, and mosquitoes. Okay, guys, thank you so much, and I hope you learned something. And please stay tuned for the next adventure of the Wildlife Ambassador. Thanks for now, and y'all take care.